away land, then perhaps they would not be able to conquer and take control of these two great superpowers. So that is one reason. Number two, as we mentioned, that the Arabs, they did not have a civilization, they did not have a government, they did not have laws, they did not have literature, they did not have architect, they didn't have anything. As the Romans and the Persians, they had a government, they had leaders, they had architect, they had governance, they had laws. So when Allah Ta'ala decided to send Rasulullah to the Arabs, it was very easy to unite them under a unified government and under one culture, because there was nothing before. If Rasulullah was to be sent to the Romans or the Persians, now what did he have to do? He had a very difficult task, and that is overthrowing the government, overthrowing the leaders that are already there. They already have power, they already have an army behind them, they already have support. So if Rasulullah was sent to them, then it would be very difficult to overpower them. So instead he was sent to Arabia, where there was already no government, so it was easier for Rasulullah to unite the people and to gain some control and governance over them. Had he been sent to Rome and Persia, he would have to fight and overpower the government there, and perhaps that would have been a very difficult task. And again, another reason, which is the obvious reason, is that Arabia and Mecca was the land of Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, where the Kaaba is. So definitely it makes sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam there. And the final and the obvious reason is the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he said, رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ, that, oh Allah, send from amongst them a messenger from them. So the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam was another reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sent to Arabia and not any other land. Now, before that session, we spoke very briefly and broadly regarding the genealogy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his lineage. And we mentioned very briefly that there were two types of Arab, Qahtani Arab and Adnani Arab, and Rasulullah was sent to the Adnani Arabs. Adnan was a direct descendant from Ismail alayhi salam. So from Ismail alayhi salam to Adnan, from Adnan to Rasulullah, 20 generations, 20 grandfathers between Adnan and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We spoke about it very broadly and very briefly. Now, there were many great figures from the time of Adnan to Rasulullah. As we mentioned, who is Adnan? The 20th grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Adnan, a direct descendant from Ismail alayhi salam. So in between these 20 grandfathers, there were very great people who did great things. But we are not going to mention all of them, but we have to know about the close ones to Rasulullah, about 3 or 4 grandfathers to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is very important to study their life and what they did, because they paved the way for the birth of Rasulullah. Each one of them did something or did many things that were very great, and that proved the noble lineage of Rasulullah and showed that there is someone great to come, and that was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we begin by speaking about Qusay, and we mentioned him earlier when he recaptured Kaaba back from the Khuza'i tribe. So to make it very brief and to understand, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his father was Abdullah. The father of Abdullah was Abdul Muttalib. So Abdul Muttalib was the grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The father of Abdul Muttalib was Hashim. And the father of Hashim was Abd Manaf, and the father of Abd Manaf was Qusay. So at least this much we have to know about the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Before Qusay, there is not much that is known in history, but from Qusay it began a true powerful movement of the Quraysh. Political movement, economical movement that led and paved the way to the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So again, we have Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, ibn Hashim, ibn Abd Manaf, ibn Qusay. So this is the a short lineage or chain to that is linked to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, Qusay, he lived about 170 years prior to the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Qusay is the great-grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. 170 years before the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he began and did many great things. From amongst the greatest things he did was he recaptured Mecca from the Khuza'i tribe who took it over from the Quraysh before them. So why was this very important? As we mentioned, there was a time before Qusay that the Khuza'i tribe, who were not from the Quraysh, they were not Qurashi, they took capture of Makkah al-Mukarramah and the Kaaba. And as a result of that, afterwards Qusay came, he married into their tribe, and he built leadership, and he gained the respect of the people. So then when the chieftain of the Khuza'i tribe passed away, he was nominated to lead Mecca, and he recaptured Mecca into the hands of the Quraysh. So Qusay recaptured Mecca from the Khuza'i tribe. That was one of the greatest things that he did. And from this, the Quraysh started to rise to power. Because from the time of Qusay, which is again the great-grandfather of Rasulullah, the Quraysh tribe, the Quraysh began to start to rise in power. Another thing he did was he built Darul Nadwa. Darul Nadwa was the parliament where the decisions were made. This was built by Qusay. And also he took custody of the Kaaba, and he created multiple responsibilities, which was the responsibility of water, responsibility of food, responsibility of the keys to the Kaaba, the responsibility of showing hospitality towards the pilgrims and the Hujjaj. This was started by Qusay. So he was the one that actually took care of all of these responsibilities himself. So he began these responsibilities and he took care of it himself. Responsibility of the keys of the Kaaba, of the food and the water, and showing the hospitality and feeding the pilgrims, the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they were performing Hajj. And before he passed away, he distributed these responsibilities to his son. After Qusay, his son was Abd Manaf. So Abd Manaf, his real name was Mughira. He was a very handsome man, and he was very beloved to his people as well. And he continued the responsibilities that his father distributed to him. Now after Abd Manaf came Hashim. And he is very important as well. Now Hashim was the father of Abdul Muttalib. So the great-grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now Hashim, this was not his real name, but he was a very generous man. Hashama was to grind the wheat, and he used to be very generous. His real name was Amr, and he was extremely generous. And it came that he never used to eat alone. He always used to invite people and eat with other people as well. Now Hashim, which was again the father of Abdul Muttalib, then Abdul Muttalib, the father of Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah. So we are getting very close into the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now Hashim, he also did very great things in his life. Through Hashim, the economical status and power of the Quraysh began. So Qusay, his grandfather, was the one who started the powerful movement of the Quraysh. They started to gain power. From Hashim, they started to gain economic power and wealth. So Hashim, he initiated Rihlatul Shita'i was Sayf. As we know in Surah Quraysh, Rihlatul Shita'i was Sayf. What is Rihlatul Shita? The journey of the winter and the summer. There was a time where there was a great drought, and many of the Muslims, they were dying one after the other. There was no food in this desert. There was no agriculture. There was no trade. There was no business. There was nothing going on. Now Hashim took it upon himself to travel in the winter time to Yemen and travel in the summertime to Sham and the greater Syria area. And he would take products and goods and merchandise from these countries and from these cities and these trade journeys and bring it back to Mecca so the people, they can have something to eat and so that they don't die out of hunger and thirst. Now prior to this, the travel journey was very dangerous. To travel and to have caravans going from Mecca all the way to Yemen or all the way to Sham was very dangerous, because there would be points of different tribes. Different tribes, they would own these points. So if they would see a people coming or a caravan or a tribe coming who they didn't know who they were, maybe they said they are the enemy. So they would ambush them, they would kill them, they would take their goods. So it was a very dangerous journey for any of the caravans of Mecca to go to Yemen or to go to Sham, because there were many other tribes in the journey itself that would ambush them. So Hashim, he took it upon himself to go upon this journey and create peace treaties with these tribes, create business plans and business strategies with these different tribes. So he would create business with the people of Yemen, he would create business with the people of Sham, and they had an agreement that any caravan that would come from Mecca, you would grant them peace and safety to travel and to do business. So he began this, and from this a lot of different goods came to Mecca, and it began the trade and the business into Mecca. So this is how the economical power started to come to the Quraysh and the people of Mecca. Prior to this, there was nothing, there was no trade. If a country does not engage in trade and business, and they cannot import and export, what's going to happen? There's going to be nothing there. And the people are going to die over time, especially when famine comes or when droughts come. So Hashim, he began Rihlatul Shita'i wal Sayf. He began a safe journey by which the caravans can go and bring and export goods from Mecca, and they're able to start business journeys. So Hashim, as a result of this also, he died on a traveling trip going to Gaza, going to Palestine. And this is why there is a masjid in Gaza that is known as Masjidu Sayyidi Hashim. Masjidu Sayyidi Hashim. This is one of the oldest and largest masjids in Gaza and in Palestine. And that is in honor of Hashim, the great-grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he died in this journey in Gaza and Palestine, and he is buried in Palestine, and they built a masjid, again known as Masjidu Sayyidi Hashim. It is there today as well. Now, as a result of this, Hashim and the Meccans, they became very wealthy because he began the economical trade system. Hashim, he had many wives. He had multiple wives, and one of his wife was from Yathrib. One of his wife was from Yathrib, and Yathrib was again the wife of. So she becomes the great grandmother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The wife of Hashim was the great grandmother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because she was the mother of Abdul Muttalib. So now, before we get there, this woman who was originally from Yathrib and Hashim being from Mecca married, there was a hikmah behind this, and this is why we know that Rasulullah had distant third cousins in Medina from the Ansar, because his great grandmother was from Yathrib, she was from Medina. So even Abu Ayyub al-Ansari was a distant cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So now, this wife of Hashim, who was from Yathrib, she was pregnant, and her husband Hashim, he passed away while she was pregnant. As we mentioned, he passed away in a travel journey to Gaza, and he was buried there. So now, we know what happened at the time. There was a lot of oppression. So if she were to give birth, then the uncles of the child, the brothers of her husband, who were Qurashi, who had the power, would just snatch the child away from her. So what did she do? She traveled to Yathrib. She went back to where she came from to live a peaceful, quiet, unknown life. And that's where she gave birth to a man by the name of Abdul Muttalib, who was the grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the father of Abdullah, who was the father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why did she go back to Yathrib? Out of fear that that the uncles of the child, the brothers of her husband, would take this child. So she went to Yathrib to live a life of peace and quiet, a simple life, no one to bother her. And she gave birth to Abdul Muttalib in Yathrib. Now, Abdul Muttalib, that was not his real name. His real name was Shaybat al-Hamd. Shaybat al-Hamd. Shayba means white, like white hair. Some people, they have white hair, they call it Shayba. So as Allah Ta'ala says, يَوْمَ يَجْعَلُ الْوِلْدَانَ شِيبًا. On the day of Qiyamah, the youth, they will go gray-headed and they will have white hair. So Shaybatul Hamd, he was born with a streak of white hair coming on his hair. So he was born with it. Some children, they have some whiteness on their hair that they are born with. So Shaybatul Hamd, which literally means the whiteness of praise, the white hair of praise. So this was the name that they called him because he was born with that whiteness on his hair, Shaybatul Hamd. So this was his real name and he was born in Yathrib. Now, fast forward. One of his uncles, the uncles of Shaybatul Hamd, the uncles of Abdul Muttalib, who was the brother of his father, who passed away, Hashim. They came, one of them by the name of Muttalib. So we have to understand that the uncle of Shaybatul Hamd, his name was Muttalib. And that was the brother of Hashim, his father. So Muttalib, he came to Yathrib, and when he came to Yathrib, he saw Shaybatul Hamd, who was his nephew, who was the son of his brother. So when he saw Shaybatul Hamd, he immediately saw that this is not a Yathribite, he is not a Madinite, he is a Qurashi. Because they had a special sense at the time that the Arabs, they could recognize the lineage very easily. So when he saw him, he knew that he is not originally a Madinite or a Yathribite, he is actually a Qurashi. He is from our lineage. So later on they found out that this was the woman who was married to their brother and this is their nephew. So as we said, what they're going to do, they literally abducted and kidnapped Shaybatul Hamd from his mother and brought him back to Mecca. Now, when he came back to Mecca, who brought him back to Mecca? The uncle. What was his name? Muttalib. His name was Muttalib. So the people, when they saw a young lad in his hand, they thought that he was a slave that he purchased in Medina. And Abd means slave, so now he was famously known as Abdul Muttalib, the slave of Muttalib, which was the uncle of Shaybatul Hamd. Why was he given this name? Because when Muttalib, the uncle of Abdul Muttalib, took him, the people, they thought this was his slave that he just purchased. So now they called him Abdul Muttalib, the slave of Muttalib. Now, we know that initially there was some problem that he had with his uncles and some struggles and his cousins, but he established himself and he got some of the wealth that was left by his father Hashim, as we mentioned, was a very wealthy man, and he made a legacy of his own. He created his own legacy. And there were three major events that took place in the life of Abdul Muttalib. We are going to very briefly mention that. Three major incidents that took place in the life of Abdul Muttalib. The first was rediscovering the well of Zamzam. The second was the vow to sacrifice his son Abdullah, which was the father of Rasulullah. And the third incident was the incident with Abraha, as mentioned in Surah Al-Fil. Very quickly, the first incident was rediscovering the well of Zamzam. What does it mean, rediscovering the well of Zamzam? There was a very large amount of time, hundreds of years, where the well of Zamzam was buried. It was unknown. Nobody knew where the well of Zamzam was. This started after the time of Ismail alayhi salam. If you remember earlier, we mentioned that Ismail alayhi salam, when he came to Mecca, he married into the Jurham tribe, which were the original Arabs down south from Yemen, who came and they married into the Jurham tribe and they stayed, and as a result the progeny and the lineage and the children of Ismail was a mixture of the Ismaili blood and the Jurham blood. So the Jurham, they had control of the Kaaba and Mecca, and they had control of Zamzam after the time of Ismail alayhi salam, the Kaaba and Mecca and the well of Zamzam was in the control of Banu Jurham, the Jurham tribe. So after a while, the Banu Jurham, they began to oppress the people and they became corrupt. So as a result of this, now came the Khuza'i tribe and they attacked the Jurham tribe. The Khuza'i tribe, they came and they attacked the Jurham tribe and they wanted possession of Makkatul Mukarramah and possession of the Kaaba and possession of the well of Zamzam. So now, when the Jurham tribe, they knew they were about to lose and they were about to be defeated, they buried the well of Zamzam. And they wanted to be lost so that when they lose possession of Kaaba and possession of Mecca, when they lose that, the Khuza'i who came to attack them, they will not know where it is. So this is the reason, out of anger and revenge, like how sometimes we have landlords and tenants. When the landlord is evicting the tenant, what does the tenant do? Sometimes they mess up the apartment out of anger and revenge. So similarly, the Jurham tribe, they knew that they were going to lose possession of the land. So they wanted to destroy it as much as possible. Now, owning and having control of Zamzam was not just water. There is honor and prestige. To have control over the well of Zamzam, there is honor to this. There is prestige to this. So they buried it. So now when the Khuza'i tribe came, there was no more Zamzam. And this was about 300 or 400 years before the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This incident took place where the Khuza'i tribe, they attacked the Jurham. The Jurham, they did an evil act of burying the well of Zamzam 300 years or 400 years before the birth of Rasulullah. So a very long time. All the way till the time of Qusay and Abd Manaf and Hashim, all the way till the time of Abdul Muttalib. From that time there was no well of Zamzam. Now how did Abdul Muttalib, how did he discover and rediscover the well of Zamzam? Allah Ta'ala showed it to him in a dream. When he initially saw this dream, he ignored it. And then again and again, he started to see the dream where he is being told that go to so and so area near this idol, near this place, and start digging and you will find the well of Zamzam. So at the time, he only had one son, his eldest son by the name of Hafiz. So after he saw the dream many times, he went himself with his son with a shovel and an axe, and he went to the area that he saw in his dream, and he began to dig and dig and dig until he struck the well of Zamzam. Now, this was a big talk. The Quraysh, the other people, his cousins and whatnot, they also wanted some control over the well of Zamzam. As we mentioned, the well of Zamzam is not just water. There is honor and prestige and status to having control of the well of Zamzam. So now they wanted control as well. They wanted power over the well of Zamzam. But Abdul Muttalib said, I am the one that rediscovered it. I should be the one in control of the well of Zamzam. Why would I give it to you? So now a scuffle or not a war, but some disagreement is about to emerge between Abdul Muttalib and the other Qurayshis. So this is where Abdul Muttalib, he made a dua that, Ya Allah, if you grant me with 10 sons who I can protect myself from them, then I will give one of my sons and I will sacrifice him. As a result of this, they did not want to fight one another. So they proposed to go to a fortune teller in Syria, which was another pagan, one of the sheikhs, you can say, of the pagans, and she was a lady. So on the way there, they became lost and they were about to die. It was very far and they became lost. There was no food, there was no water. So they proposed that everyone should start digging their own grave. Start because you're gonna die. There's no hope. So when Abdul Muttalib began digging his grave, he actually dug up water. He dug up water. So now they said there is a sign and hikmah from this behind Allah Ta'ala. So they didn't even go and they said, you shall be in control of the well of Zamzam, because that is what kept us alive. You kept us alive. This water kept us alive. And they came back to